Today, we're jumping into Leviticus Chapter 24, and this chapter reveals something really profound. It shows us how the holy objects inside God's tabernacle are directly, and I mean directly, connected to the call for justice out in the community. We're going to see how a lamp that never goes out and sacred bread on a table actually set the standard for how God's people have to live. It proves that for God, true worship and true justice, well, they're completely inseparable. So let me ask you this. How do sacred rituals in a holy place have anything to do with social justice out on the streets? At first glance, Leviticus 24 can feel like two totally different stories, just kind of stitched together. But we're about to see that they are woven together on purpose, with a single, powerful truth. God's holiness isn't supposed to be contained in a tent. It has to define his people everywhere they go. So let's start with part 1, holiness and worship. We're heading right inside the tabernacle, which was the sacred tent that served as God's actual dwelling place among the Israelites. You really can't overstate how important the tabernacle was. This wasn't just some religious tent. It was the absolute heart of Israel's entire existence. I mean, think about it. This was the spot where the holy, transcendent God of the universe chose to dwell among his people. It was literally where heaven and earth met. And because of that, every single detail inside had to reflect his perfect holiness. Inside this holy place, God commanded 2 constant visual sermons. First, you have the golden lampstand, which had to burn continually. It was a perpetual flame that basically declared, I am here, I am your light, I never leave you. And then second, you had the table of showbread. 12 loaves, 1 for each tribe of Israel, serving as this constant reminder that God himself was their provider and that his covenant relationship with them was unbreakable. These were not just decorations, they were anchors for the nation's faith. And the ritual for this bread of the presence was so precise, so rhythmic. Every single Sabbath, without fail, new bread replaced the old. This was not some mindless repetition. As you can see from these steps, this constant cycle was meant to mirror the faithful character of God himself. His provision and his presence were as reliable as the sun rising on the Sabbath day. It kept the people anchored to their faithful provider God. And all this careful order brings us to a really pivotal question. Okay, the quiet, holy reverence inside the tabernacle is crystal clear. But what happens when that same holiness is violated, not inside the tent, but right outside, in the middle of the camp, in the messiness of everyday life? And just like that, the scene shifts dramatically. We move from the sacred order of the tabernacle to a chaotic, real-world crisis out in the camp. And this is where all that theology of worship gets put to the test. It's about to reveal if the people really understand the holiness they're called to reflect. So the story is pretty jarring. A simple fight suddenly blows up into a national crisis. One man, and it's noted that he's the son of an Israelite woman and an Egyptian father, does the unthinkable. He blasphemes the sacred name of the Lord. Now, this isn't just cussing. This is a direct attack on the very identity and authority of Israel's God. And the leaders know this is a test case they cannot get wrong. So they stop everything, and they bring the matter directly to God. God's verdict is, well, it's terrifyingly clear. The man is to be brought outside the camp, and then the witnesses, the people who heard him, must lay their hands on his head, which symbolized them taking responsibility for their testimony. Then the entire community has to carry out the sentence. Now, this is a hard truth, but it shows with absolute clarity that the holiness of God's name is not a suggestion. It is the very foundation the entire community is built on. To attack his name is to attack the community at its very core. And in his perfect wisdom, God uses this heartbreaking case to do something much, much bigger. He establishes timeless principles of justice that are going to define his people from this day forward. And that brings us to part 3, one law for all. So right here, we see this divine logic unfold. The law moves from protecting God's name to protecting human life, which is sacred because we are all made in his image. Then it extends to property and making things right. And crucially, God establishes the principle of eye for eye. Now, this gets so misunderstood. This was not a command for personal revenge. It was a legal standard for judges to make sure justice was proportionate. It was actually designed to stop those endless cycles of escalating violence that were so common back then. It was a law of limitation, a law of fairness. And then comes this absolutely breathtaking declaration, a principle that just shattered the legal norms of the ancient world. God commands, "You shall have one manner of law, for the stranger as well as for one of your own country." Think about that. In a world where justice was always tilted toward the powerful, the rich, the native-born, God creates a level playing field at the foot of his law. And why? He gives the ultimate reason. For I am the Lord your God. His own perfect character is the foundation for all true justice. So the chapter closes with the community's sober obedience. They carry out God's command exactly as he gave it. And in this incredibly difficult act, they learn the lesson that binds this entire chapter together. The reverence you show for the bread and the lamp inside the tabernacle means absolutely nothing if it isn't matched by a reverence for justice and holiness in the life of the community. And so, this ancient chapter leaves us with a piercing question for today, doesn't it? How does this challenge our own ideas about worship and community? The lesson of Leviticus 24 is that God has never separated our Sunday worship from our Monday justice. True holiness, the kind that truly honors him, is a seamless life, one that reveres his name in our hearts and reflects his character in our streets, demanding fairness and justice for everyone, every single day.